People. Okay, let's do it. You ready? I'm hopefully ready. This week is Dune Messiah. I think I'm getting that. I think I'm getting that in camera. Can I talk today? Dune Messiah, Frank Herbert. Look at him there. Look at him riding away like the absolute genius that he is. Look at him. Okay, this particular one, um, this particular book was $1.25 in 1970. Just think about that, people. It's just a simple. What do they say? It's a simple mass print edition. But look how well it's held up. Look at it. I mean, yeah, the paper's all the way it looks, but it's not coming off the spine. The glue's not falling apart. People have used it. People have used it and it's still together. So don't look down on ye old mass edition books, people. Okay? Do not do it. They might hold up longer than you think. Longer certainly than the other ones I have that are all hardback and probably looked pretty. All right? Just remember that. Keep it in mind. Okay. This is the second Dune book. And I'm going to try and give you a take sort of covering both. Like if you've read the first one, how it will sort of go. And if you haven't, I think this holds up even if you haven't read the first Dune book. That's how good it is. This is absolute science fiction perfection, people. Look how thin it is. You don't need some big fat honker. You don't have to blab on and on to tell a great story. You don't have to go into all kind of minutia to give me some kind of theory on relativity or whatever this gobbledygook ends up being, okay? And you can still be deep into science fiction, okay? That's what this is. And that's who this is for. First, it's a 4 out of 5. No doubt about it. 4 out of 5. It's too deep for casual readers. Okay, so don't offer it to them. If you're about reading, though, irrespective of your genre, I don't care how into elves you are, take a break, go hit up this bad boy. 100% worth it. You just need it in your mind. You just need it upstairs, people. But if you are into sci-fi, if you are into science fiction, ooh, you'll eat this up. You'll eat this up. It's not hard to get a hold of. I'm sure you can get it on Kindle. I looked it up. I think it's $8 on Amazon for a brand new version. You'd think, well, it's small. Is it worth? It's 100% worth the $8. It'd be worth $20 if it was some hardback edition, some fancy artwork, whatever you want to do, however you want to take it. If you get the words, bro, it's 100% worth it. All day, every day, and twice on Sunday. Write it down. Okay, now let's get into this book because I was reading it. Let me put it down before I destroy it. It is from 1970. As I was reading it, it sort of shocked me a little how little descriptions he needs to get me into his story. And I was trying to think as I was looking over it. How does he do this? Because some of the concepts are going to be your genetics, right? Genetic memory. Um, these kind of clones, human body control, the human mind, and how, the limitations are not thereof, and such. Governments, how governments function, this kind of thing. And I'm like, how is it I know what the crap's happening? And sometimes I'll look at the words and they're not really telling me. They're somehow not telling me, but I'm getting it. And I thought of an analogy, right? So if you have a particular area of woods, right? It's the large expanse of woods. And you line up 1,000 hairdressers and you make them walk in one at a time. And then you line up 1,000 hunters, same thing. 1,000 mechanics, right? 1,000 nurses. They're going to be different people. They're going to have different backgrounds. Some are men, some are women. But each of them has picked a particular profession, right? And I think there's some, I don't know, some psychology to it. A type of person wants to be an engineer. A type of person wants to be a mechanic, right? And those archetypes will carry. So the odds that the mechanic will take the same path that the hunter takes, who's been in the woods a lot, not likely. But the odds that a hunter will take the same path another hunter took, much, much more likely. And I bet if you did the graph, you'd see the dots, right? But I bet it'd be fairly tight. The things that the hunters do, the things mechanics do, right? So in that sense, I think Frank Herbert's aware that we are readers. We have that in us. We are inclined in that direction. But if we were drawn to a book called Dune Messiah, right? That naturally we would be drawn to the same subjects he was drawn to in his time. Without knowing it, without ever having read the same article or even the same technology being in existence, right? So when he wrote it in the 60s or whenever he wrote it, genetics was at a state that it was at. It's advanced since then, but the advancement doesn't change the root interest in genetics, right? I've read, I've heard, I've seen stories about genetics, right? Now, in that same amount of time, there have been stories about knitting that I haven't seen, you know? There are things about other cooking that I haven't, partaken of, so to speak. Why? Because they aren't in my interest. So he can know that us readers and us people who like science fiction will be drawn to various stories. This is the new advancement in nuclear weapons. This is warfare. This is some text on government, some story, some video, however it's going to come to us. Now would be YouTube, right? You see Victor David Hanson talking about World War II and the ramifications and all this and that, right? It'd be the same as him, but not a Victor David Hanson. It's some other person, some other historian talking, some other geneticist, some other scientist, some other story brought to the masses, right? And so he can sort of pluck these unseen strings that he knows has to be there and get us to buy into a story without elaborating on genetics, elaborating on this. He just hits the ground and he just runs and you just follow him. It's absolutely incredible. The depth on this book, right? And let's say you're young, you're a youngling, and you haven't read all these stories about genetics, right? You haven't read all this about World War II and 1, and on we go. Well, how will you take the book? I think it'll be more effective if you're the same type of person, right? If you're a reader, and if you're especially science fiction readers. Because you will want this information. Even though you haven't had it yet, you want it. Before I knew about World War II, I wanted to know about world wars, right? And so you would read this and you would just absorb it like a water in the desert, right? And so in that sense, it's still effective. It's actually kind of genius. And there's no other way sort of to describe it other than that. Because because what we're talking about isn't words he put in, it's words he chose not to use, essentially. He could have added chapters just on genetics. He could have added chapters on sort of, what do we call them? Hereditary memories, right? This is why do majority of people in the world see like fangs and red eyes as dangerous? We would say evolution has told us that, fangs can kill, spiders can kill, right? We have this revulsion to certain things built in, even as children, you would sort of say. Genetic memories evolved into this kind of thing, right? He doesn't say that. He didn't bring these things up. He expects you to know them. And if you don't know, to be interested, right? But there's not a chapter. I can't get you a chapter and say, here's how he got you there. You got yourself there before you came to this book. Or you're going to get there better after reading this book. It's actually kind of genius. And how he thinks these words, it's I don't even know how. I don't know how he does it. It's magical. But there I am. He hits the ground running at an absolute speed, and I just go with him. But let's get into some of the parts of the book itself. Because if you haven't read the first Dune, doesn't matter. We go right in. Well, let me see. There's a prologue, but we know I skip prologues. Muad'Dib's imperial reign generated more historians than any other era in human history. It's line 1. Sort of. Because what he also does is he gives me these quotes from, I don't know, made up historians. And that too. When you take in history, right, you do get these sort of quotes. Because historians like to talk this way. Hannibal will have said such and such, and it relates to Patton doing such and such in Italy, or some mess like this, right? So it feels real. Even seeing this little quote, so I know a lot of books will do this. Some don't do it as well as others. He does it magically. It gives you this feel, even to start the book, that is real. We don't start with the main character, even. We start with, I think, a couple of spots of historians just pontificating, just little excerpts from their pontifications, aside from the little quotes we get, right? And then we get into the story, we're aware already that Muad'Dib somehow gets defeated, right? We start with the end, one of those things, and we work towards what's happened. But then the closer we get, the less we believe it's going to happen. It's kind of weird reverse. We start with a conspiracy. And even this is just, he just plops steak on your plate. Gives you a fork. No knife. You just stab it and start eating it. Okay? We have a face dancer, hold on, I gotta find this word because it's a funky. I like the way it looks though. Tleilax. Tleilax. I think I said Tleilax. Call it a face dancer. He describes it like he has sensitive nerves and elasticity, and he can just make his face look different, right? And before you have time to think about that, we bring up the Guild Steersman. Man, he's like a half mutant thing that lives in a tank. He's just inhaling and eating spice 24/7. I'm like, what the? Even if you didn't know what's happening, you'd just be drawn to these type of characters. Before it gets too crazy, there's a Reverend Mother, that I can relate to, and a Princess Irulan. I think I said that right. I can relate to a princess. And then before it gets too even weird about that, we start having a dialogue between them, and he'll bounce between people. You'll say something, the face dancer says something, and you get the inner monologue of his face of how that's going to play, the reaction I'm trying to get. Why would they say what they said? How are they staying? People are very intensely aware of what's happening around them. And the Reverend Mother is the same. They want to kill Muad'Dib, Paul Muad'Dib, the Emperor, before he can establish roots in an imperial family and sweep them all aside. And what he is was the culmination, a Quasat Haderach. That's a weird word. Again, his word choice is almost its own thing. Because the Bene Gesserit Reverend Mother, again, it will sound Italian and sort of Catholic, sort of holy. But then Tlilax sounds space as all get out. Doesn't sound anything like anything I know. Muad'Dib sounds Arabic to me. He plays on these things. He wants those images of the languages brought to your brain, but just the flavor of them, right? And then he adjusts, and then he moves, and he shifts things. So you constantly have this thing played on your mind. In any case, what we end up having is their Quasat Haderach, which is these are women who control that inner, what do we say? That genetic memory. They're trying to control it. They can already not lose them, right? So when one of them dies, the next one can learn, absorb, take in, access the memories of the past ones. So each Reverend Mother lives with generations of Reverend Mothers behind her, in with her. Be a formidable opponent, right? Someone who's it's like being 1,000 years old without being 1,000 years old, kind of, so to speak. I have all these memories I can bank on and pull to play. Well, what they've tried to do is they can access feminine genetic memories, but not masculine, not male. And that through him, through their genetic pairing, they would find the man who can match, who can draw on those memories. It came early because the mom didn't follow the rules, and now they have him just in existence. He is real, so they don't want to lose it, right? They would rather somehow get a hold of his genetics again, a la have him have a kid with the princess who's one of their sisters. If she could have a kid with him, then they have access to those genetics again, and they don't have to restart. But short of that, they would rather that than he be with Chani, his wife, because she's wild genetics. They don't have no control on that. Who knows what'll pop out? That's how they say it. The Tleilax are geneticists as well. But here's the difference is they will just play with the genome like it's any other kind of machine, right? So they don't mind getting in the body, messing with some genes and seeing what happens, and then taking that and redoing it over and over, right? Now all of this, again, is a concept, but 3,000 years in the future, right? He never tells me the date. He says, like, Earth is in the mythical past. They're so far in the future that Earth is mythical, right? That's how distant they are. So I can imagine geneticists from now, with 3,000 more years of knowledge and practice, where would they end up? They end up in this book. They end up here. They're trying to find a way to kill him, and in this, the Tleilax face dancer says that they made their own Quasat Haderach, and the Reverend Mother's tripped out by it. But to me, it's like dueling styles, right? Where this group wants to function one way, the Tleelax, and the Reverend Mothers want to function their way. And they're both coming to the pinnacle of their works, of thousands of years of trial and error, right? Because if they had, they're wanting to play on the genetics. Hold on, if genetic memories are there, and you want to get to them naturally, it stands to reason that someone would want to get to them artificially. And I think that's what we have in the Tleelax. They're like the opposite of the Reverend Mothers. They make metallic eyes, they can replace limbs, they can do all sorts of things meshing these genetics, but people don't like to mess with them. Why? Again, another thing he does that's genius. They use artificial insemination, pods, all this kind of thing to just grow humans, flesh. Somewhere in the history of this world, in lore now, they called it the Butlerian Jihad. It was some kind of war with robots, right? And since then, you have like a culture across the universe that's anti-technology in any kind of sense that can think. They have toasters, they have sensors, but they don't have any kind of computer or anything. So anything that's too close to that is taboo. The fact that he puts cultural taboos underlying motivations for characters in a future that he's making is magic. It's absolutely magical, people. I can't get enough of it. And that they have some roots in our time. We mess with genetics now, right? What do we want? We're trying to clone sheep. If you clone a sheep, you're eventually going to clone a sheep. Then what? A person. You'll want to get to clone a person. We want right now to use sort of genetic tests to say if your kid will have defects, right? If your kid's born with autism, at this percentage, maybe you don't have the kid. It won't be long until we see your kid's going to have autism and just, remove that. Let me just remove that gene that makes it autistic and you'll have and then, well, why stop at removing autistic? Why don't we add taller, add stronger, add blue eyes or green eyes, right? It's this progression you can see. And he just flings it out into the future. Then he goes and grabs it and leads us along. Absolutely genius. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. We have a Gola. This is the thing that Tleelax made. Duncan Idaho was a hero in the first book. He saved Paul Atreides, who became Paul Muad'Dib, Emperor of the Galaxy. One of the Sardaukar, who were the last Emperor's elite soldiers, saw the body, understood that there's some value in it, grabbed it, put it on ice, and sent it to the Tleelax, who then start doing their work to it. Right? What they've done is they've brought him back, and that's a question for a good chunk of the book. And I guess the question is, if you died, right? If you got stabbed in the head, which is how he dies. They fight with knives. If you got stabbed in the head and died, and someone, I guess, cloned or remade you exactly, or reanimated the flesh, how much of you is in there, right? So for him, it's a lifetime of knife fighting. They remake those nerves exactly. Every nerve used is, what do we say? Like if you think of a thing, your brain shoots off electrons or whatever. The more you think of that thing, the stronger it makes that connection, right? So if I remake all those connections at the strength that they are, is that like, could I remake me? You get what I'm saying? That's the question we ask in this book. That's why I say it's just glorious sci-fi. Then he makes him, he being Frank Herbert, writes in Duncan Idaho, who was just a soldier before, because in their process, they make him a mentat and a sort of a philosopher. They call him a Zuni philosopher. Again, a mentat are people who went off to take the place of computers, because we're a culture that's anti-computer. They trained over thousands of years to let their brains function like computers. Of course, only certain people can do it. Only certain people can be NBA players. But you find those people at a young age and start training them. And through years of breeding and crossbreeding, right, so to speak, you learn to identify the genetic markers that will make someone able to do this. You grab them, you make them a mentat. They've upended this, right? They can make a Gola, this flesh, have mentat ability. So at any point he can become this computer and analyze data, but he can also become a philosopher. And I'm like, those are almost like antithetical. A philosopher and a computer are two different things almost. There at the end of the book, you see that they've done this for a purpose. They're trying to almost like I'd say like the Big Bang. You're trying to crash things into each other and see which ones can re-give life to this dead man, right? Who knows how many times they've tried? Who knows what else they've done? They just know they sent in this Duncan. The conspiracy thinks that they just want to kill the emperor. I don't think they really care. They want their experiment to come to fruition. But the idea that if you were perfectly regenerated, right? Like I just have a knife wound. Let's just fix the knife wound structurally. How much of me remains in the rest of the tissue? No idea. He thinks of that and then tries to think of a way that you would. Like, you know how they just defibrillator, right? The defibrillator. He thinks of a way of how would these people defibrillarize those memories. And what he ends up doing is they try and hypnotize him into killing Paul, who he loves. And the stress, the rage of that hypnotized to kill versus I don't want to kill. The contest between it breaks the dam and he becomes Duncan Idaho again. So in this book, in lore, they've brought him back to life. Which is trippy. We have the spice. The spice itself, right? It gives you a kind of pre-sense. You can, like an oracle, you can sort of see the future. The more you take, the more you can see. You take too much and you die. To me, this reminds me also of like, was it the 60s? When scientists, like at UCLA, I believe, invented LSD. And he was just running around the country giving people LSD trips. And they were like trying to come to grips with what the LSD trip was supposedly telling them. Right? They thought it was a higher state of consciousness. So there's this idea, I think, of drugs and pharmaceuticals that do something to your mind. Right? Now you pair that with some of these conspiracy theories, or sometimes just not conspiracy, some psychics, right? If you watch crime, true crime, you will come to people who say they're like, I know where the body is, and I've had a vision of where the body is, right? And some of the visions end up right. So if you take that concept of someone who can see out past themselves, real or not real, because I'm making a sci-fi book, and I pair it with this idea of drugs and chemicals that can do something, then I go out in space. Let's say I find a planet that makes a kind of substance that affects that kind of the brain, and then have people who hone that effect over years. That's what the Guild Steersman is. He needs the spice to see through space and get everyone there safe, and not hit an asteroid at hyperspeed and blow everyone up. He has to have it. The Bene Gesserit need it for their inner genetic memories, but it's just a chemical, right? That that some of the people on the planet take it as a holy thing. That's natural. People take things the way they're going to take them. Our characters never take it as holy. It's just a function. It's a thing. Like B12 makes you energetic, or caffeine wakes you up. It's just a substance, and it's cool to see it that way. That there's endless possibilities in space. So the odds are, eventually, we're going to find a planet that produces something that has some deep effect on the structure of human bodies, right? And then he plays with that idea once he's there. So he has a lot of conversations about oracles. Paul sees all the futures, because if you know all the past, you can build it with this Mentat brain he's developed into probable futures. Or, to him, sometimes it's like the energies, right? Those things just pour into him, and he can't help but see 1,000 different possibilities. That if I throw this book at somebody's face, one, I go to jail, and in one instance this, and in one instance that. And he keeps playing with these futures to see what's going to happen. And he doesn't like what he sees. So he's trying to steer the ship, and eventually he settles on what he settles on, which is, I guess, the most peace for the most people. It ends up costing him his life. He doesn't see it perfect, because in the end he ends up with twins instead of one child. But he ends up dying. His wife dies. But it's on his terms, right? But we also have, like, people are aware of this. It's not mystical to these people who we're dealing with, the conspirators. They send tarot cards all over the planet and have people doing tarot card readings. And they see it as, what is it? It's like kids splashing the water. I'm trying to look, and their little hands are making little splashes. Well, if I have 1,000 kids, 100,000 kids, I can't see anything. They're just making this big turmoil, because everyone who sees into the future can almost kind of change it. Some of it's play, but some of it would just be the effort plays on that ocean of the future possibilities. And some are more skilled than others. The Bene Gesserit have a sort of skill, and they apply it. But it's cool that he doesn't leave it with just the idea of seeing the future. He takes it, and he's like, well, if they can, others can. If others do, what happens to, like the Oracle of Delphi? What if there were like 9 oracles of Delphi? If one sees one future and says it to someone, you've changed the future. Then this one sees the new future. What if he tells that one the new future? We keep having this constant chaos, this constant shift. Well, that shift then plays on our emperor, our Paul Muad'Dib. And he keeps trying to corral it into something that he wants to see. We mention the Lady Jessica. Now, if you've never read the other book, it's just his mom. But if you have read the other book, it's very interesting to me that we have a person who was such a large part of the first book outside of the bounds of this book, essentially. He just has her go back to their home planet of Caladan, and she just stays there. She doesn't interfere in any way with any of our actions in our story. And to me, that's also realistic. When you try and write a type of this book that's going to be this sort of broad thing, right? Like if I were trying to write about World War II, I'd need more than one character because, excuse me, because one person didn't live through everything. It was in the Pacific. It was in Europe. It was in Africa. No one could be all places at all times. You see? So I need 3 or 4 characters to tell you everything that happened. So some would be left. As important as such and such person as Winston Churchill was, he never met MacArthur. You see? I don't think MacArthur ever met Patton, as important as they were. Historical figures. So if you want a realistic type of historical story, you have to leave some characters behind, and he does. He doesn't mention Gurney Halleck. He doesn't mention the Lady Jessica. We never go to Caladan. We never go to any other planet. We're on one planet, essentially in the palace the whole time. We didn't even hardly go out into the desert. It's genius. He also brings up, because they talk not like, how is it? They talk like a think tank almost, where we are having deep discussions on the nature of government. Now, say what you want. I don't know what your personal thinkings are. Some people like no government. Liberals want no. Libertarians want no government. Liberals are fine with the hand in government. Republicans are about capitalism. However it wants to break down. It'll change. It swings back and forth. But the root of it is that humanity, human beings want government, right? And we have thousands of years of history proving it. Whenever we're left alone in a large, we group up, because who wants to get eaten by a tiger by themselves? Then we start dispensing with rules. You know what you're doing. Why don't you keep track of the city walls, and I'll just farm up these, tomatoes. I just want to farm and eat, and you worry about the walls. I mean, it's like, all right, I'll worry about the walls, but I'm gonna need to borrow some guys every so often. All right, fine. That turns into he's the governor. His family's been taking care of the wall for years. They called kings now. Make him a king. Make him the duke. Make him a czar. They're all just people in charge. Emperors. They're all just people in charge. Because we all don't want to do all the minutia that's required. Right? And as we get complex, so too do the problems. Governors keep track of sewers, of roads, airlines, borders, criminals, the justice system. On and on we go, right? So now we're the same concepts, again, flung into the future, and we talk about how we want these things to function. His mom warns him, you can't have a religious government, that it caves in on itself, it eats itself, right? But he knows, Paul, that you can't have a government. The Senate, democracy, in his view, becomes a monster of its own that will then eat him, right? Democracies eat royalty, unless you're British. So we have these sort of arguments back and forth as to what is he trying to do, how is he trying to establish a future that sort of lasts beyond a thing that would just eat him, eat his, because if you see the future, I've laid my life out, it's fine. What's the point if the way I set it up means my kids get eaten alive, right? Like the French Revolution, where they turn on him and you chop in Marie Antoinette's head off, right? If 3 generations before that king could have seen and adjusted, I see the future, and if I do these things, those things won't happen. Wouldn't you do them? That's what he does. He's trying to think of ways to make a future that smoothly allows his children to live, so to speak. At least that's what we're going with. Mm, I'm not going too much into the plot itself. The plot is also very, circle and circle and another circle. These loops that keep coming around. It's very complex, the plot to kill him. And I don't think in the end that they succeed. I think they would take it as a success, but they didn't do it. Right? But then that's the history of the book is to decide. I love that even in lore, if we go into the book, those people aren't sure what the crap happened. Right? Because in the end, his wife dies. He knew that would happen. He got 2 kids instead of 1. He didn't know that was going to happen. A nuclear bomb of some kind melted his eyes, so he has no eyes. Which in the Freeman culture means you get left in the desert. They don't kill you, they just leave you in the desert. Which means you're going to die. A worm is going to come eat you or whatever. How are you going to find your food? But for them, they don't want dead weight. But he's not dead, so they can't we'll just give it to the worm will eat him. And then the worm will come help us later, and in that way you help the tribe. I think that's their thinking. In any case, he can use his oracle abilities to see the present. So he's walking around with no eyes, which is freaking everyone out, especially these people who are very heavy into mysticism. But he's still acting like he has eyes. I can just describe everything to you because this is a future. This is the present of the future that I've seen, so he can constantly live in it and see what he wants. Right? He does that till his wife dies, which he knows she's going to die. But to him, he says it's saving her worst pain. That he can't envision a future that doesn't collapse on him and his wife horribly. So he picked the least painful path. So she dies in childbirth. And then he either so much grief where he chooses to extricate himself. He now is actually blind. He extricates himself from this constant vision of what he's seeing around him. His last test is the Tleilax? Tleilaxi? Tleilax? It's a funky looking word. They come to him and say, we've made Duncan, Idaho come back to life. We can do the same for your wife. Do you want her back? He kills the first one who offers, the face dancer. Then he's in his room and another one comes and offers. And he asks Duncan, Idaho to kill him before he breaks, because he doesn't have it in him to keep saying no to this offer in this moment. And who wouldn't? Who wouldn't say, bring my person back to life, right? He has to say no to that. He knows he has to say no. But he's on the verge of not being able to. So Duncan, Idaho stabs that fool. He dead. Duncan, Idaho's Duncan, Idaho. And then we cut to another chapter. And again, this is almost, what is it? We don't get the moment. We get someone describing the moment to us, which is cool. A man leads him. What is this message? My battery's low. On my phone. He gets a message. I got a message. He gets a freeman to lead him to the desert and leave him. And Duncan, Idaho's awake or around and realizing he's stressed about it. He can't go help him. He wants to go help him. Right? He's getting this secondhand. We're getting this secondhand from Duncan, Idaho. Because Duncan, Idaho didn't lead him out there because he wouldn't have left him. Right? But Paul knows that. So he got someone else who would leave him. And he walks out into the desert. And his last words are, now I'm free. Right? And then Duncan's thinking, in the one sense, I should go look. But in the other sense, he knows he can't find him. You cannot find one person on this desert planet. It'd be impossible. There's anywhere he could have been, and he could be eaten by now. It's he really comes to terms with the hopelessness of going to find him. And then he's talking to Stilgar, with this other Freeman, and he's telling him, and it's like it affects you as a reader. He says he's an Atreides. He won't give up. He's gonna try and survive. And Stilgar's like, yeah, the desert will get him. He don't have eyes, the desert. He's just matter of fact about it. And that's the two sentiments he leaves you with. And some of the people, I think they give you the sense that some of the freemen believe he never died, that he's always now in the desert. You know, that he just walked through the desert out of physical form into the spirit realm, and he can just do what he wants now. But to end a character that way as an author is also genius. This whole book is the end of this character. Popular character. Ender's Game. It was a popular character, Ender. Orson Scott Card didn't want to get rid of Ender, so we make like 19 books, and it gets kind of goofy, and we get this sort of. I have another video on it that shows you how convoluted that gets. But you have to do what the story dictates, right? That he found this creative way that we as readers can take it almost. We can be Freeman and say no, he went right into the spirit realm because we're dealing with stuff we don't know. We can take it as an imperial citizen. He's just dead in the desert. He could have died and the sand just ripped him apart. He could have just eaten by a worm. We don't know. We don't know, and it adds to the myth in just the right way. Right? It's just the perfect amount. It's the perfect way to end this character. And it works, again, if you just read this one. I think you get sucked into this emperor and his wife and his future children. You get drawn to him. You're interested. You care. If you read the other book, you really care. And you can read this one and then go back and read Dune, and it doesn't ruin it. Right? I think maybe because they keep doing a lot of seeing the future, you start to feel like Paul. You start to feel adrift in the possibilities. Right? And then at some instances you feel like the Freeman, where let me cling to these traditions. Let me grab hold of here and look at the story this way. But you can let yourself drift and see it from more than one view. And it's a short book. It is not long. I mean, this is a bantam little version. So the prologue is literally that. It's your prologue. It says Dune Messiah. And now we're in the book. And there's no last page, essentially. The last page is the epilogue. We're reading book until then. It's a tiny book. But it's so dense. You could read it. If you read it like once a year, I think you'd have fun doing that. Same as I do Lord of the Rings, right? You read it just once a year. You just chew on these ideas. It's such a fun place to be. All right. Ad time. I talked long enough, right? That's reasonable. It's a wonderful book, people. Wonderful. Now, I know I said a lot if you're a sci-fi person. If you're a reader of books, if you love to read, you will love this book. It is wonderful. Now, if you read it and you think it sucks, then stop and reread it in 5 years, and you'll know it's good. You just haven't grown enough. You're a baby. Now, I guess somebody might not like it. I don't know. People are weird. It is science fiction perfection, people. Absolutely. Bar none. I'm not going to lie. It's better than my books. That's no detriment to me. It is so good. If you want to buy a book and you can only afford one this month or this year, however you do your budget, and you're like, should I get Dune Messiah or your book? I mean, bro, go get Dune if you haven't read it. Seriously. It's spectacular. Spectacular. All right, I'm waiting for this to tick over to 50, and then I'm out of here. And then I come back next week with another book. I want to thank everyone for watching these videos. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. I'm going to be honest, I need to write more so I don't get behind. But I appreciate you. All right. I'm out.